Hi guys, so welcome back to another lesson in Algebra 1. Today we're going to be looking at function notation, and function notation is just a fancy way of writing a regular equation. And so how you know you're successful today is you can interpret function notation. You know that it is similar to regular equations, it's just written fancy style. And you can evaluate a function when given a value. So, a regular equation we might write like this y equals 3x plus 2. That's regular style. Well, we can take that same equation and we can write it fancy style like this. F of x equals 3x plus 2. So I want to point out something that is in common. So this y on this side, we can just simply replace it with f of x. That's our fancy style. And then this regular x, it's still regular x over here. Okay? So that regular x is going to be our input, and that y, or f of x, is going to be our output. Alrighty, let's write some notes about that. Okay, so if our output is also known as our y value, our range, or dependent variable, the f of x is just our output. So remember, if we were talking about a graph, it's the what's going on the y-axis. It's the up and down part, right? That's our output. Our input is our x value, our domain, or our independent variable. It's going to be the number in the parentheses, okay? And that is going to be, it is the input. So the number in the parentheses is the input. Just to remind you from the last lesson, your input value is graphed on the x. So you know it's what's down there. So when I'm saying the number in the parentheses, let me give you an example of that, and you'll see that, in later examples, but an example of what this is right now, we could say something like b of -4, okay? And our input in this case is just going to be that number there in the parentheses, that -4, okay? It's just written fancy style. That's all it is. Okay, so let's see what we need to write down here. It says, note, you can have, so on the worksheet, they might list multiple functions. And you can know the difference between the functions because they will each have different letters to help you tell the difference between them. Okay, so that's how we'll know there are different functions. So for example, we could have this f of x and we could have this g of x. Okay, so you might have a problem where like this one's saying f of x equals 5. Well, the equation in that case, ignore that I gave it to you right here. Okay, ignore that part. But if this was like your problem, if f of x equals 5, you would pick this here because that's the one that has the f. Okay. So let me go ahead and solve some of these as an example. That part that I said about the multiple functions, it may be a little confusing, but if you see it on your worksheet, hopefully it will make more sense once you see them kind of all listed out. Let's see. Let's go ahead and erase this part. Okay, so this part down here says find f of 2. Okay, well, what does that mean? My f of 2, this number 2 right here, oops, I reversed my color. Hang on, let me go back and get the proper color. We're gonna, okay, this 2 right here, that's my x. Okay, we're just gonna plug that in right there. So let's go ahead and write that out. I'm gonna write my equation over again. This is my function here. So I'm just going to write that over again. It's just a way for me to get my brain organized and to see all the different components. That there's a -2x minus 1. And so then I'm just going to take this 2 and I'm just going to put it right there. So we can highlight that. We're going to put that right there. That's all we're going to do. All right. So f of x equals -2 times 2 minus 1. So my negative 2 times 2, that gives me negative 4 minus 1. And then I can, finish it right here. F of x, negative 4 minus 1 is going to give you negative 5. Okay. So f of 2, what that means is, what is y when x equals 2? Okay, that's all it is. It's not too bad. It's just written fancy style, okay? Now, this other one over here, we're going to take this same function, okay? But notice it's asking if f of x equals 5, then x equals, it's giving it to you in a little bit different way, okay? It's saying f of x equals 5. So when we look up at here and we see where our f of x is, we're going to replace 5 in that, okay? So we're going to take this 5 and we're going to stick it right here. So if I write this f of x equals negative 2x minus 1, again, what I'm doing is I'm just simply going to take and replace this f of x. I'm just going to take this 5 and I'm going to drop it right here. So I end up with 5 equals negative 2x minus 1. And then now I've got just a simple equation I can solve. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And we get 6 equals negative 2x. Let me go ahead and carry that up here. We got 6 equals negative 2x. We're going to divide by negative 2. That cancels. And so 6 divided by negative 2 equals negative 3. And that's my answer. And don't get hung up that I wrote negative 3 equals x and you're like, I like my x on the left side. You can write x equals negative 3. And these are equivalent, right? We just flipped them like a pancake. Okay, you flip a pancake, it's still a pancake. Alrighty, so what does this mean? So if we say f of x equals 5, then x equals whatever, all this means is if y is 5, then x equals, what? That's all it's saying. Okay, we just happen to write it fancy style. That's it. Function notation is just fancy style way of writing equations. Okay, so let's look at this example 2. Okay, so the example 2, we have to put a negative 2 in here in this parentheses. And so remember, like if it's in the parentheses, this is telling you exactly where to write it. So if the negative 2 is in the parentheses, if we replace that x with negative 2, that works. Okay. So I'm going to write my equation over again. This is a good chance for me to get my brain together and realize what I'm writing. This is a way to just get organized. I'm going to take this negative 2, I'm going to plug it in here. Because we're just putting that negative 2 wherever we see the x. Okay, so we got 3 times negative 2 plus 6 divided by 2. And that's going to give me 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 plus 6 divided by 2. If I rewrite this up here, negative 6 plus 6, we get the interesting situation of 0 divided by 2, which feels a little weird, but anytime you are going to divide 0 by anything, of course that's 0. So my f of x, and we can replace this, we can say f of x negative 2 equals 0. Okay. So the answer here is 0. Okay, let's look at this example 3. This, we're saying my f of x equals 12. So I'm going to plug 12 in this spot where I see that f of x. Okay, we're just going to plug that 12 in there. I'm going to rewrite this so I can get my brain organized. So f of x equals 3x plus 6 divided by 2. I need to erase that a little bit. I got a little messy there. Let me try that again. 3x plus 6 divided by 2. So I'm going to take this 12 and I'm just going to replace this f of x. Because we said f of x equals 12. That means that we can put a 12 here in that spot. 12 equals 3x plus 6 divided by 2. Now remember, if something's in a fraction, which is what this is, it means division. It means it's dividing by 2. Whatever's in the bottom is what's, it's being divided by. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides of this by 2. This cancels. 2 times 12 gives me 24 equals 3x plus 6. I'm going to have to carry this over here a little bit. So let's see, we got 24 equals 3x plus 6. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. That cancels. 24 minus 6 is going to give me 18. We're going to divide by 3 on both sides. 18 divided by 3 is going to give me 6. And so my x is 6. And remember, I wrote it this way where my x is on the right because that's the way the equation solved, is the x was on the right. But we're not going to get worried about that. X equals 6 and 6 equals x is the same thing. We just pancake flipped it. That's it. No big deal. Okay, let's look at the next one. So the next one we've got b of x equals negative 3. So I'm going to take that negative 3 and I'm just going to drop it right here where that b of x is. Okay, I'm going to write my equation again because again this helps me get my brain organized. And organizing my brain in math is always a good strategy. So I'm going to take that negative 3 and I'm just going to drop it right here where this b of x is. Okay, because we said b of x equals negative 3. That means I know I can put negative 3 right here in its place. Okay, now we can work on rearranging this. I am going to subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, that cancels. Negative 3 minus 5 is going to give me negative x equals negative 2x. So I'm going to divide by negative 2 on both sides. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a positive 4. And again, I wrote my x on the right-hand side because that's just where it was in the problem originally. It's on the right-hand side. But we're not going to get hung up on that. If our brain likes to see x equals 4, that's okay. We can just pancake flip it and write it that way. It's no big deal. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, so it says find the value of b of 6. So that is where my x is, right? We know that 6 is in there where the x is. That means that we're going to replace any x with that 6. So let's go ahead and write our equation so we can get our brain organized. And I'm just going to take the 6 and I'm going to write it where I see an x. Okay, so I get b of x equals negative 2 times 6 plus 5. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. Don't forget that negative. I left myself almost not enough room there. So negative 12 plus 5 is going to give me negative 7. So my b of x, it was really 6, right? That x was 6. B of 6 is negative 7. So we can draw a box around that, and we are done. Alrighty, my friends, that is the end of that lesson. And so until next time, bye.